Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Linda Schenk and I'm the Executive Officer for Wine Communicators of Australia. This is the second webinar in our series of 3, Driving Your Business Forward Through Virtual Tastings, which has been kindly sponsored by the Department for Trade and Investment. This webinar series has a B2B focus, but we recognise that the skills that you learn throughout these 3 series of webinars is transferable, and you will be able to use them, of course, with B2C and also media engagements moving forward. I'm really excited today about the panel members that we have with us. They will be sharing their knowledge and experience on the best way to communicate your virtual tasting and identifying some tools that are available to everybody to use. We'll be hearing today from Nathan Goad, who's from Achieve Video Marketing. Those of you who were with us on Monday will have met Nathan there. We'll have Jing Chou from CLCA. Welcome, Jing. And we also have Claire Sims from South Australian Tourism Commission and Ellie Lockwood from Wine Australia. You can see them all on the screen now and they're all raring to go. As per usual, we are recording this session and we will be sending a link to you of the recording so that you can re-watch this presentation at your leisure. It will also be housed on the Wine Communicators of Australia YouTube channel and website. Please make sure that you ask all the questions that you like throughout the webinar. We will be holding off until the end to answer them, but please write them as you think of them so that you don't forget them. There's a little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, so just click on that and type away as questions pop into your head. I'd now like to hand over the presentation to Nathan, who will be talking to us about the best ways to market your virtual tasting with a B2B focus. Thanks, Nathan.
Good afternoon, everybody. Now, I'm going to focus on creating effective wine tastings. So virtually, with a B2B focus, a lot of the slides that I'm going to be showing as well will have some B2C, and we'll talk about, I guess, best ways to differentiate between B2B and B2C. Okay, so we'll be talking about social media strategy. Now, I have been doing a pilot of a new live Wine Weekly show called SA Wine Weekly, and we've been trialling it on Facebook Live and also YouTube Live. And we'll go through what I've been doing to advertise that. Now, it's kind of B2C, but we'll try and turn it around to be a bit more of a B2B focus. We'll also go further in how to engage, so how to write engaging content. And then I'll give you a collaboration example of how we can use tools to collaborate and to make these virtual tastings with our distributors even better than what you're doing at the moment. Okay. So in this section, I'm going to run through thumbnails. Why do we use them? And I guess what the thumbnails look like for all different platforms. Now, I'm hoping you know what a thumbnail is. It's the catchy picture at the to get people's attention. And in the industry, we like to call it clickbait as well. I'll be showing the Facebook Live invite, some video promotions a couple of days out, morning of the show, so what to post on social media or to send out to your distributors. Reminder invites get sent out by Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. I'll show you what it looks like when we go live. Then uploading the live recording to a YouTube channel. Also uploading it to LinkedIn for international guests. Facebook reminders and shout outs, and then pictures of the winners of the wine that we give away to actually make sure that there's more and more things on Facebook, and also a lot more on social media platforms to get engagement for what you've already put on. Can you move forward for me, Linda? Your mouse is right on there. Right, excellent. So here's a picture of some of the thumbnails. So for the SA Wine Weekly show, on the left-hand side of the screen there, we've got a Facebook thumbnail. As you can see, nice big picture, a little bit of advertising on there. You've got to be extremely careful if you are advertising on your wine tastings, that on Facebook you don't have a lot of text. Now, there is a tool that you can use if you are going to advertise on Facebook. So your thumbnails, you can put your thumbnails through this tool and it will tell you whether it's okay for the platform. On the right-hand side, we've got the YouTube one, and it's got to be inviting. So we create a thumbnail for each of them and we make it specifically for each of the channels. And it's got to have details about the event. It's got to have good pictures, a little bit of advertising on there, but it's got to be so if someone's scrolling that it actually grabs their attention and pulls them in. So as we can see here, we're moving on to the Facebook Live invite. Now, this is an invite that we send out for people just before the show starts. They can click on it, get a reminder. Now, you could do something very similar to this using the thumbnail, embedding it in an email and sending it out to your distributors, or there's no reason why you couldn't send this out to your distributors, something similar with your wines, a picture of the winemaker, things like that, and send it out through the Facebook platform. You could also send it out through the LinkedIn platform as well. And I guess when it's B2B as well, if you are trying to attract new distributors as well, then you can send this out via an email campaign or via even just a direct email to them. So on the video promotions, we like to do little video promotions early in the week before the show comes on. So we usually go and meet the guest who's coming on the live wine show, and then we have a chat to them about what's coming on the show, and it's just a little bit of a teaser. So you could use this to send to your distributor as well, just as a reminder to let them know that the webinar is on this Wednesday at 8 o'clock, what it's going to be about, what wines we're going to taste, or it might not just be a wine tasting. You might be doing a whole rebrand or something like that with your distributors. So if you are going to do that, you can advertise what's going to happen, and it's just a reminder to keep it fresh in their mind as well. So on the morning before we go live, we also do another post once again, or even the night before, just saying once again, we can't wait to go live. It's just another reminder that you need to send out of the morning of. So once again, everyone's busy. You want people to be on these webinars, so you need to keep reminding them. And then you need to contact them at least 5 times to let them know when the webinar is on and what's happening with it. These are just some more reminder invites. So once again, getting it up on Facebook, getting it up on LinkedIn, so all your contacts are seeing it, or all the distributors are seeing it. And whatever I'm putting up on there as a post, you can always send as a message directly to distributors as well. You want them to know that you're actually when you're going live. So we've done all this groundwork just to get people to come on to the webinar once we actually go live. So once the live streaming's on there, you want to be able to answer questions. You want to be able to do it as professionally as you can. Always leave the questions, if you can, to the end of the webinar. And like we're going to do today, and have all the questions at the end, because otherwise it's just going to become interrupted and you'll lose people's concentration. So uploading the live recordings. Now, this is really important. once your live stream's done and once your live wine tasting's done with your distributors, and if you've recorded it, then you can edit it a little bit if you want to edit out some of the ums and ahs, or if you, like on Monday, started the recording a little bit early while people were watching and you need to edit something like that out, then you can edit it up and then you can put it up. You can put it up on your YouTube channel, and then you can have links to things that you talked about, links to where to get the wine, and then people, the distributors that are on there as well, can also share this with other people that they're trying to sell your wine to. So it might be a hotelier group they're trying to get to purchase your wine. They might send this wine tasting on to them. And once again, you can also put it up on LinkedIn, very similar as well. And repurposing your content is extremely important. So we're going to go into some strategy. So, sorry, this is once again, it's just a strategy for the LinkedIn post. So putting it up on LinkedIn, similar to what you would to on the YouTube channels. Linda, do you want to just flick through the slides for me? I'm having a bit of trouble getting through them.
No problem.
So as I stated before too, we give away wine on the live wine show, and then we use these posts when the winners come and collect their wine. We use these posts once again just to keep front of mind and just to be touching people again on any way we can on social media. And again. So I'm going to skip through to the engagement now. So what to include in the video post. And we're going to jump onto using LinkedIn as a lead generating platform, how to write social media posts, and then I'll hand over to Jing and he'll talk about considering cultural differences in communications. So if we can jump to the next one. So what to put in your videos. Now, it's extremely important that you put something interesting in there. You can't be bland and just straight to the, I'm grabbing the glass, I'm pouring the wine. It's got to be something really interesting. Maybe a story about the winery, a story about yourself, a story about where the grapes come from, where the variety came from. You've got to base it as much as you can about a story to keep people's engagement. And you've got to have it eye-catching. So when you're doing it, hopefully you're on webinar 1 and you would have learned how to film a little bit better than some people have been doing. So you'll be able to see the nice colour of the wine and you'll be able to see the pour into the glass, make things eye-catching. Once again, I can't stress it enough, make it story-based. Make it short and snappy. Don't go on too long on tangents about really in-depth technical winemaking procedures or things like that. Touch on it, but just don't go too far into it because you'll probably lose people's engagement. Then the videos need to be multi-purpose. If you're going to use the videos, as we've been through, multi-purpose them, chuck them on your LinkedIn channel, chuck them on your website, put them on your YouTube channel, use them more than once. Okay. So we're going to go quickly talk about LinkedIn now. I could talk about LinkedIn for hours and hours because it's probably where I spend a lot of my time social media-wise. I've just brought up some examples here of my personal profile and then our company profile. Now, if you're going to be using LinkedIn as a tool and you're going to be using it as a marketing tool, it's almost now a landing page like a website. So people want to go to it. You've got to have a really good background picture, and it's got to be about something that what you do. So everybody in the wine industry should have a nice picture of the cellar door or some bottles of wine or some of the staff in the winery in there. And you have to have a professional profile picture as well. Now, there is a 52-point strategy that we work with to get your LinkedIn profile working, and it's all about getting the highlights right, getting the About You page, getting some videos in the featured section, and then getting your history right. And the history isn't just like your old CV, it's about what you did, things you accomplished or where you worked and things like that. So LinkedIn's an extremely important part of B2B moving forward. And ever since Microsoft bought the LinkedIn platform, they've pumped thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into it. And why I've brought up the company page is all things are pointing towards LinkedIn's going to be spending the majority of their R&D money now on improving the company pages. And the company pages are really helping with the SEO these days as well. So you've got to keep your company page up to date. You've got to be putting your wine tastings on there. You've got to be putting all the information you can get on there so people can use that as a reference point for your company as well. So I think these 2 points here are I can't stress enough, make it as professional as possible. And there is a huge amount of work that goes in the background to get it to start performing. So when people are looking, you might have invited a new distributor. The first place they're going to go now is they're going to look on your personal profile. They're going to go straight to your company profile afterward to have a look at it. They might look to see if there's previous tastings and things like that on there as well. So if we can skip through to the next one. Now, so LinkedIn Sales Navigator, I'm not too sure about how many people would have heard of LinkedIn Sales Navigator, but what LinkedIn Sales Navigator is one of the higher echelons of the licenses you can buy for LinkedIn. Now, if we were looking at, okay, we've got some wine distributors, and I think I've used California as an example here, and we would like to find some more wine distributors in the California area to invite to our webinar, then we could use LinkedIn as a tool to search for these people that work in the industry. So if you've got LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and you can do a free trial for a month on this as well, so you can trial it out. And what you can do is you can actually go in, and I think it's a 100-point search you can do, and you can find people in the industry. So just in here, I put in California in the United States. I've put a couple of other regions just around there as well. I've picked a seniority level of director or above, and I've just filled in wine and spirits. So what that then will do is the LinkedIn Sales Navigator will go through the LinkedIn platform, and it'll collect anybody with a director or above tag in the wine and spirits industry in the California area. And then it'll run a search and bring up the results for that. I've made it pretty defined so we didn't have thousands of results. So if we could just jump to the next page. So what this has done is given me all of the people that are in the area of the California area, either working in distribution, so we can, in the wine and spirits, then we can quite easily send an invite out. Now we can send one of the snappy invites with a little a really good thumbnail on there, inviting these other people to the webinar. So we're talking about how to bring more B2B focus, how to bring more distributors. If you've got one in the area, you're running a webinar, did you want to bring in others from the area to showcase your products to them? This is a good way to go in and actually search and get the detail. You don't have to know people. Now there is a LinkedIn etiquette also. So when you are then going through and messaging people, do an introduction first, tell them who you are. Don't try to sell them. Don't try to push the webinar on them on the first connection request. Just connect with them. Then after you've connected with them, leave it a couple of days, and then just send you a nice little picture of the thumbnail or a little teaser video for you, and then invite them to come along to your live wine tasting. This is a good way to build B2B distributors in an area that you're already targeted. So if we can jump to the next one. I'm going to go through also, a lot of people have asked me the questions about what's organics, what's boost, and what's paid in social media. So organic is if you're going to put a post on Facebook, or this is really any platform. If you're going to put a post on Facebook, Instagram, whatever it may be, about your wine tasting, if you just put it there, the algorithm is not really going to show it to a lot of people. Some people that are following you may see it, But if you go and boost a post, a lot of people think, wow, that's really going to, for $50 I've boosted it and 10,000 people have seen it. But who are those 10,000 people? As you can see in my little infographic I put in there, the targeting doesn't really help you that much on a boost. It just really pushes it out to everybody. So you're not really going to get down to your target market. So if you really want to do a paid advertising on these platforms for your webinar to try and attract people to it, now this is probably slipping back to B2C, but if you are going to do it, then you can see in the last column the amount of targeting you can do on the paid ad versus the boost, and organic's pretty much got nothing. Then you can really target into the people that you want to see that you're going live for your wine tastings. It's just showing you ways, I guess, to get to that, the business people. Everyone's on Facebook, every CEO and that's on Facebook, everyone knows that. But if you can target and get right down to the people that are following in the wine industry, might have wine tasting, be following different wine tasting pages and things like that, you can actually go in and target them right down to what they like to do, where they are. You can add call to action buttons. There's a million things you can do in the ads platform compared to just an organic or even just a spraying a boost post. Now, majority of you probably know how to use the Facebook ads platform. If you don't, then getting a social media advertising person to help you is of great benefit. So if we can jump to the next slide. So we're going to go a little bit more into the paid advertising, from LinkedIn to YouTube and then also Facebook. There probably should have been a little icon of Twitter in here as well, but may not have been updated. So let's just skip through to the next slide for me, please. So if you're going to write a LinkedIn campaign, so instead of using the Sales Navigator, you just want to do an actual ad that'll pop up in people's feed or on the right-hand side when they're scrolling through LinkedIn. What you have to do then is you have to go into the LinkedIn Campaign Manager. And why I've brought this up is if you want to really target down to who you want to see that you're doing your live wine tastings or attract other people to your webinar, then you really need to use the ads platforms. They're all very different, but the actual basis of it is very similar. You're going in, you're creating a campaign, you're picking who you want to see it, and then you've got performance, and you've got to put ad budget behind it as well. So if you are looking to break into a new market and attract new people, these are the ways to do it. LinkedIn's really expensive when you use it as an ad campaign, but the leads that you get back from it are usually quite a high quality. So on the Facebook Campaign Manager, majority of you probably would have used this, so I'll just skim over it quickly. Once again, you set up your ads in here. A nice little teaser video for your wine tasting would be great, or just once again the little thumbnail we went through before, using that to attract people to your ad, and then drilling down into the exact demographic that you want to be included in that webinar. The next one is a little showing you the Google Campaign Manager. So this is obviously really for YouTube or your Google ads. So YouTube's also run through the Google Campaign Manager. Then once again, you pick your audience, you drill right down, you put your video, or a lot of people don't know at the moment now you can use static ads on YouTube as well. So when you're scrolling through on your mobile, right at the top of your mobile feed is now a static ad for YouTube. So you could have a really nice little thumbnail on there of your wine tasting, and it actually works extremely well to get people interested. And you can target on who's seeing it, and then you can also run your little ads on different wine pages. But obviously, the more subscribers a page has, the more expensive the ad's going to be. But I'm just trying to touch on, if you really want to get new people to come in, there's all different ways of doing it. And you can just get right down to the actual nitty-gritty of who you want to come along and invite those people rather than just spraying it out and wasting your money on the ads platforms. So now we're going to go to how to write a social media post. Now I'll put some examples up on there. And my first example is an ad that we did for Zonte's Footstep. And it's ad shot in the studio, really fun. We used a costume shop, and it's just to attract people to what they're doing. The video was fun and engaging and did extremely well for them. And the next one of just an example I've got there is the Saltram's Wine Estate. Now, I didn't have anything to do with it. I just saw this when I was scrolling through Facebook myself, and I noticed how well it actually stood out. It's all black and white. It's all basic. It's got a really nice picture of the vineyard. But what caught my eye straight away was the simple red slash with the $50 off. And $50 off your purchase, you think, wow. If you look into the fine print, obviously it's got cases only. But this is a great little ad. They've sponsored it. They've hit it at targeted people, obviously being doing a wine show that is showing up to me. I thought that was a great little basic ad, and something similar to that could attract people to your webinars. And there's another one of Blewett Springs Wine Co. had posted a little video that we did before they came on the show, and the video went extremely well, and it was all about wine tasting and what wines we were going to show and things like that. So that actually worked really well, got people interested, and a lot of people came on to watch the live wine show that I host because of that tiny little ad. But it's all about people still read the text. As much as being a video marketing company, I wish they didn't. I wish they just watched the video. They actually always read the text. So you've got to keep your sentences short. So, and you've got to keep your actions and verbs. So you've got to have taste this wine, experience this unique Shiraz. You've got to have something catchy in the ad so people are going to read it and go, wow, I need to do that. So come and taste, come and experience the new variety, whatever it may be. Make sure that you've got something catchy in there. In the first couple of lines usually is where you need it to be. Stay away from colourless business speak. Just make sure, if you can, it's as catchy as possible. Use emojis. Now, this one really kind of grates on me, but emojis work. And I don't care what anyone says, use emojis. And use emojis, pick some for your winery that suit the winery, and use them all the time. Use them to emphasize things you want people to read, put them before you put links on. And the reason being is when someone's scrolling through the platforms, the emoji catches their eye. So as much as I hate to say it, you need to use emojis when you are writing the social media posts. Also, I've still got a little bit to go. So also, depending on what platform you're on when you're writing your social media posts, you need to include hashtags. So Instagram, 6 or more hashtags, the algorithm loves it. So make your own hashtag up. Hashtag Blewett Springs Wine Co. Hashtag Zonte's Footstep. Hashtag Saltram Wines Estate. And every time you do a post, use that hashtag, because as time goes on and these platforms get flooded, what will happen is people will start searching a lot more through the hashtags. LinkedIn is the same as well. LinkedIn only ever use 3 hashtags, and use your hashtag and use the 2 that you think are the most suited to what content you're putting on. So hashtag Zonte's Footstep, hashtag wine, hashtag live wine seminar or live wine tasting, and just you only use 3. And Twitter, similar as Instagram, 6 or more. Always make one up for yourself. Always tag in other people that you can as well. So if you've got wineries that you're friendly with, or your distributors are in the area, tag them into the post as well. That'll make it go a little bit more viral. My other big point for any of this is don't rush your content. Make sure that before you actually press post or post the ad or whatever it's going to be, that you actually read through what you've done. A lot of the time, and I'm guilty of it as well, is not reading through it, and then there's being a spelling error. A spelling error in it just makes it look extremely unprofessional. So even if you need to get somebody else to read through it after you've done it, a second set of eyes is always great. Get someone to have a read over it, just make sure everything's right, make sure the link's right for the webinar, and just make sure that it's all the, I guess, grammar's correct as well. Okay, and we'll go on to the, you're trying to wrap me up or something. We'll go on to the engaging invitations to your tastings. So I've just taken this little picture I saw off the internet and put it on there. I didn't plagiarise it. I just thought it was great. It showed the grapes. It showed the wine being poured. It showed the computer that it was a virtual tasting, and it's nice and simple. This would be great as a thumbnail. Maybe a picture of a face or something in there of the person who's going to be presenting it would be good as well. But like your social media posts, when you're writing the text for these invitations, make sure that it's catchy. Join our tasting on Wednesday. Experience the world's best wine in your slippers. Win a bottle, whatever it may be. Just make sure that it's something engaging and catchy in the text that you write with it. Because you might be putting this on as a post, you might be emailing this directly to the distributors, or you might be emailing it to people that you've searched through and found on LinkedIn that you want to become your distributors in that area. So you just make sure you really drill down on what's in the show, what you're going to be doing, and also make it catchy and snappy in those first few lines. You don't have to use emojis in the when you're doing it for emails, but if you're going to put it on social media, put emojis in it. As much as it grates me to say it, emojis is what will grab people's attention. So I'd also say, don't ask too many questions. Don't give them too much information. Tease them a little bit if you are sending out these invitations. A little video, a little clip showing the wine being poured, showing the vineyard, things like that, just to tease them into it so they want to come and see your webinar. It's hard B2B because I know a lot of you guys are probably thinking out there, oh, this is all well and good, but they're already our distributor and we're just going to send stuff to them. But if you're trying to attract other people to it and you're trying to keep it fun and fresh and keep the distributors interested, because you want them to make sure that everybody rocks up to the webinar. Okay, so we can jump through to the next one. So I've got a motto in our business is we don't want to be the ad, we want to be the story. So get creative, don't be boring when you're doing these live tastings, have some fun. Doesn't have to be 100% polished when you're the presenter. Be genuine is my number one tip for anybody presenting it. Just be genuine, be yourself. You guys are the experts in the industry anyway. No one knows your wine better than you do. So let other people know how great it is. Now I'm going to jump straight in now to a collaboration example of how I would use the Ring Central tool that we have as our phone system. You might think, well, phone system, what's this really got to do with it? It's actually a unified communications platform. So what it actually does is, next slide please. It's got everything you need in one beautiful app. So it's got messaging, it's got video, and it's got a phone. Well, everyone's got a phone, but so what I'd like to elaborate on here is you've got your distributors. When you're using Ring Central, you can make a group. They've got a communication tool which we call Clip, and in that group you can send everyone invites. They join the group and it's a little select group. They can invite, if you wish, they can invite other people to it. So you've set up a group and it might be Californian wine tasting. You've got your couple of distributors on there. They've invited other people from their company. They've invited hoteliers from the other group. to come in as well. Then what we're going to do then is we're going to send some information through this. We can send videos, we can send them tasting notes, we can send them video tasting notes. Now that's a great idea. And then we can also send them, whether it be new labels, anything like that. We can communicate through this tool, and there's unlimited storage on it, which is awesome. So you can really set this webinar up, and then all you have to do for, if we can jump to the next slide, please. This is just an example of the SA Wine Weekly one. On the right-hand side, you can see all the images and videos and pictures and things that were on there. Last week's Adam, last week's winners sent a picture in there. He's also sent a video on how good the wine is, what he won. And this is the way we communicate with the people that are coming on the show, and also internally on how to, what's happening in the show, what video's on, what post's going to go on next week, things like that. So this communication tool is second to none, and it's included in the cost of it. So if we flick, and you've got your group there, and then all you have to do is press the video button on your screen, and then you can schedule a meeting. So you can schedule your webinar with your California wine group. You just one press of a button, you press the button, it brings it up. Extremely easy to use, and then you just put in the time, and it's going to invite everybody in the group. And then if you just you click what calendar you're using to schedule it on. So if you flick to the next screen, then it automatically populates in your Outlook, Google, or whatever calendar you're using, and then sends the invite out to everybody for the webinar. Now, this is awesome because all they have to do is click on the one link. You've been communicating with them already through Clip. They get the link through here. Because I've already got the Ring Central stuff downloaded, the video conferencing platform and the webinar platform is already downloaded on their computer, and all they have to do is press the link in the email. So one thing that is also awesome about it, and you guys would have seen these coming through, is you get reminders about the webinar. Now, these reminders are awesome. You can set it how often you send them, but you're sending them to your group. Obviously, the reminders you guys got had a nice picture of Wine Communicators Australia and a nice glass of wine, so you can tailor what goes in there, and then they get reminded of it. You're getting people to come on. They can click on, one click, bang, they're onto the webinar. So I just wanted to show you a way that you could really collaborate and make these webinars with your distributors. Awesome. Okay, I think that's about it for me for now.
Excellent. Thank you, Nathan. When you're saying, just a quick question and clarification, when you're saying about webinars, you are talking about the virtual wine tastings that is hosted through a webinar platform, right?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. So thank you very much for that excellent presentation. I've noticed that there's a few questions come through, but I'm going to wait till the end to answer those questions for everybody. And so there definitely will be questions for you later on. By the way, I forgot to mention before, if anyone does have any questions that they want to ask a specific member of our panel, by all means, just put their name first and then the question, and we can make sure that that those questions are asked of that person. I'd now like to introduce you to Jing Chou. So Jing Chou is an amazing man that I met quite some time ago now, but he works with a lot of corporations, businesses, and also Wine Australia, helping them be China ready. I think that's fair to say. Jing will tell you more about himself than I can probably do anyway. Perhaps if we could turn Jing's screen on, if it's not on already. So Jing's going to talk to us today about Chinese distributors. I'm not going to steal his thunder because I'm really looking forward to this presentation myself. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Jing. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to our producers today. My name is Jing Chou. So the title of my presentation is How to Lose Your Chinese Distributor in 10 Minutes. And just like Nathan said earlier, that it's important to create a thumbnail or a clickbait. So this is my clickbait. which is inspired by the movie How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, starring Matthew McConaughey. Look, I've never been called the Chinese version of Matthew McConaughey before, but I certainly wouldn't mind if we start that today. So I'm going to talk about, in the next 10 to 15 minutes, some of the common mistakes people make in speaking to their Chinese distributors in a virtual environment. And I want to perhaps start by acknowledging that I'm certainly not here to tell people what they should be doing, because I'm not a one producer myself. But if you have been using one of these opening lines, some of these pitches in front of your Chinese distributor, for example, our history dates back to, or we are a boutique business, or we are a premium producer, I would suggest that perhaps you're not doing well enough. Well, it's an okay start, but I think in this competitive world we're living in now, doing okay is certainly not going to be enough. So I want to really challenge you to think about what are the better ways to describe your business and your products to a Chinese distributor. I want to begin by highlighting some of the issues that you're going to face. So the quick question is it really easy or difficult to impress your Chinese counterpart? And I suppose the question is the answer is pretty straightforward. It is always difficult, right? It's difficult. Otherwise, I wouldn't have this job. But why is it so difficult to impress your Chinese customers? Well, there are a few reasons. I'm going to highlight these reasons, and then I'm going to give you some ideas of how to work around these issues. First thing I would like to talk about is the level of digital readiness amongst Chinese people. Well, according to lots of research, here's one article written earlier this year. It is suggested that an average Chinese person in China is very well aware of the technologies around them. In fact, they spend on average 6 hours online every day. So that suggests to me that perhaps they do know a lot about technology, different apps, different platforms, different services. But there's one issue that a lot of people haven't realized it, because they only look at the opportunities. They don't understand the risks and the challenges of engaging China. Now, here's a graph that I got from the Chinese government. What it suggests is that the majority of Chinese internet users are mobile. China is quite an interesting country because only 65% of Chinese population have access to internet, which is significantly lower than Australia's population. But for those 65% of China's population, they are heavily involved in digital technology. In fact, 98% of users are mobile. Now, what happens here is that it actually creates a massive challenge if you're a producer, because the fact that everyone's involved in mobile apps and devices, it creates what we call something called absent presence. Now, the idea of absent presence, we often talk about it in classroom methodology when we talk about education models. Absent presence basically means that people are sitting there listening to you, but they are not actually listening to you, all right? Because they are constantly distracted by their mobile devices. They're distracted by apps, by the messages, by the short videos that they see. So they are listening to you, but they're not really engaging. So absent present people are heavily distracted. So it creates a massive challenge, because let's say you have a brand story you want to talk about. Let's say it usually takes about 3 or 4 minutes. The reality is that they will only listen to you probably for just 1 minute, and their mind will go off. They'll go elsewhere, but they're still sitting there in front of the screen. So you really need to think about how do you work around this issue of absent presence. I'm going to tell you some strategies later on. So that's one of the issues you're facing. The second challenge when you engage Chinese counterpart is the language issue. Now, I'm sure that many of you have been working with your Chinese distributors for a long time. You understand that English is their second language. But I really want to put down in terms of numbers, because I'm a kind of a number person. So this comes from the Chinese university entrance examination standards. So they have an exam board in China, just like we have that in different states in Australia. So the requirement of a university student in China is they need to have 3,500 English words in their vocabulary. Okay, so an average Chinese university student will have 3,500 English words. Now, if we compare it to an average English-speaking person, you might ask, how many words does an average English-speaking person have? The answer is between 10,000 to 20,000. Okay, so for an average Aussie person, the amount of words they know is between 10,000 to 20,000. So let's use the minimum number, 10,000. But then you're talking to a Chinese person with the average English vocabulary of 3,000. So what that suggests is that everything you say, chances are your listener, your Chinese listener, only understands 1/3 of it. Okay, so no matter how beautiful your story is, how fantastic your tagline is, they will only understand 1/3. Now, this is a massive issue. If you are playing around some words, let's say your whole marketing pitch, your whole pitch is built upon the word boutique, then you run a risk because let's say an average Chinese person has no idea what the word boutique actually means. So for them to listen to you talking for 10 minutes around the word boutique, they will not understand any of it because that foundation is not there. So any keyword, any buzzword you're going to talk about, that you're going to build a story about around it, you really need to make sure that you have at least 2 or 3 different ways of explaining that word. Let's say boutique. Have you got 2 or 3 other words to explain what boutique actually means? Because language can be a massive challenge for you. The other issue is around the culture. So Chinese culture is very much what we call a very reactive culture. So reactive culture is about listening to a monologue rather than having a conversation. So when you are speaking to your Chinese distributors online, chances are you're not going to have an in-depth discussion because it's very unlikely that they are going to ask you any questions. They're very good listeners. They will listen to you, but chances are that they're not going to ask you anything right there and then. So you're not really dealing with an active engaging audience. You're dealing with what we call a symmetric information session, which basically means that you're just giving them information. It's a one-directional conversation rather than a two-directional. So when you run a very successful event in front of a Chinese audience, sometimes you get very devastated because at the end, they don't ask you anything back. But I don't want you to feel that you have failed your presentation. Sometimes it's a cultural thing that they do not ask you questions on the spot. So these are some of the challenges you're going to have, the absent presence, the language barrier, and certainly the cultural, the monologue kind of culture. So what I want to talk to you about right now is perhaps some of the tips and tricks and some of the things that you can do to minimize some of the risks and make your presentation more engaging, more interesting. So I've got a few tips here to share with you. I want to start by this concept called Go Bucket. I'm not sure if you know what I mean by Go Bucket. If you have been to KFC, it's certainly, there's no shame in admitting that you love KFC. That's fine. We all have flaws. KFC, when you look at their menu, you can pay $12, $13 for a full meal. You got the burger, you got the chips, you got the drink. But also you can choose what they call the Go Bucket items, which is basically the the minimized version of a full meal, which you only pay $5 or $6 to get a small bucket of chips and nuggets without the drinks. So Go Bucket is something we often talk about in marketing. The idea is that rather than having a full version, you break it down. You break it down into smaller sessions. So let's say you have prepared yourself a 2-minute brand story you want to tell the Chinese audience. But now you know that they're absent, but they're also present at the same time. Perhaps you break it down into 30-second stories, right? So chop them up. Break them down into smaller sessions so you can actually have an audience who are more likely to engage because it's short enough. So anything you're going to say, let's say a 10-minute version, you always need to prepare short version of it and use them at a different time to a different audience. So Go Bucket is about shortening your presentation, make it simpler, make it smaller, so people are more likely to engage because they don't have to spend too much time on listening to you. So that's the first thing you can think about. The second thing, which probably doesn't make sense to anyone unless you understand Latin, omne triumph perfectum. That's a very old Latin phrase. Now, if we translate that into English, it actually feels like, you know, someone from a Harry Potter movie. Omne triumph perfectum, what that means is 3 is perfect, okay? 3 is a perfect number, which if you think about all the religious stories, all the theater productions, all the movies, everything that comes in 3 makes perfect sense. Whether you're talking about religious stories, or if you're talking about a movie trilogy, or the Jonas Brothers, if you're into pop culture, 3 is a perfect number. And that's a little technique we often use as public speakers. So often when I do a presentation, I will say, this is a fabulous idea for 3 different reasons. So I list 3 reasons. And actually, 3 makes perfect sense to the listener. Otherwise, if I say there are 4 reasons, people think that's too long. If I say there are 2 reasons, that's a little bit too short. 3 is a perfect number. Okay, so if you're going to tell a story, if there are 3 things you're going to share to support your view, then it usually goes down very well. And the other thing that I would suggest is that if you're going to say something really important, say it 3 times. Okay, say it 3 times. Perhaps the first time is a kind of a warning, you know, I'm going to talk about something. The second time is the actual delivery, you know, I'm going to say such and such. And then towards the end, you revisit it and you say, okay, what I just told you about was such and such and such. So you say it 3 times, so it's more likely to go down very well because remember, you're dealing with an audience who are absent present. Okay, so saying it 3 times is more likely to be remembered by your listener. And because the Chinese audience are unlikely to engage in an active conversation, so it's more of a monologue rather than a dialogue, so you really need to find ways to follow up. So you can do a presentation, let's say you go through your products, you do a virtual tasting, but you really need to follow up with an email or perhaps some other channels to say, hey, how do you feel about the presentation we just did? Do you have any questions? If so, please contact me. So you really need to have a follow-up strategy. So as much as important it is to do a virtual tasting, I would say you need to put equal amount of effort into developing your follow-up strategy because this is where the true value is when you engage Chinese audience. Now, the other thing which I often struggle with when I talk to a lot of producers in the wine sector is they keep using the words like premium, which I often find it's a little bit of an empty word because it's a word that everyone's entitled to use. The real challenge is how do you prove words like premium? I took this photo when I was at Chou's supermarket. If you go to buy a dozen of eggs in the supermarket, you have so many different choices, right? You can have free range, farm eggs, which is quite confusing for an average guy like me. But what's really interesting is that these producers actually took an effort to explain the definition of what's organic egg, what's barn eggs. So it actually makes it easier for an average consumer like me to understand why am I paying a price premium. So what I suggest is that anything you're going to say, let's say I'm a premium producer, I'm highly regarded, where's the evidence? Okay, where's the evidence? Because quite often when you have a Chinese distributor, they will be talking to lots of different suppliers from different countries. So for them to hear the word premium, well, they probably hear it like at least 20 times a day. The real nugget is your evidence. It's how you prove where does the word premium come from. For example, the number of awards you have won, or perhaps some of the wine critics reviews, or some of the productions, some of the master classes you've been doing in different countries. You really need to think about the evidence to support your claim. Because otherwise, if you keep saying the word premium, people get fed up with them because everyone's using those words. It's highly substitutable. One more thing, here I want to talk about is that remember that you are talking to someone who is going to sell your products to their customers. So you really need to find a way to simplify your message because at the end of the day, they need to remember what you tell them and they need to repeat that message to their end customers. So there are a number of things you can do. Like this is one of the templates I often use. For example, if I'm talking about a certain wine and I want to talk about the sort of the hierarchy of my portfolio, I often create a little story to say, if your customer is planning to host a big banquet, this wine will really impress their customers because it's a single vineyard, it's limited production, and it's made by one of the most renowned winemakers in Australia. So you almost have to create a little story rather than talking about premium. Create a little story. So what it does is actually to help your distributor to tell that story to their customers. So you really need to make sure that whatever you say is repeatable by your distributors. So it's simple language. Think about occasions rather than adjectives. Okay, think about stories, occasions, rather than just one or two of those words. One final little tip. I want to put this image up here. I want you to guess what movie it is. And I think it's pretty simple that if you're saying Finding Nemo, spot on. If you're saying MasterChef, you probably need to get yourself some lunch. The idea here is that you need to think about things in visual way, okay? Because far too often I find wineries talking about something that is really intriguing, but they just say it. And 5 seconds later, people forget it. Let's say my family came to the region and I'm the 5th generation. Now that's a fascinating story, but a lot of the producers just stop by there and without elaborating, without going further. This is where visual can really help you. Let's say you're a 5th generation of producer. Here's a photo of my grandparents. Here's a photo of my mom and dad. Here's a photo of me when I was 3 years old at the vineyards. So having these visual things really build the stories. And this is where you separate excellent presentations from an average okay presentations. It's not just the talking, but all the visual things you can bring into the presentation. So I want you to think about photos, images, things you can just probably grab and then actually use them to explain your stories. So there's a lot of things you can use. It's not just the talking, but all the other things you put in place. So my time is up. Before I go, I hand mic back to Linda. Just a little bit of a shameless self-promotion at the end. I do a lot of training for lots of different sectors. So I'm actually running a virtual training session starting from next Wednesday on the topic of building effective communication with your Chinese market. So everything I just told you in the last 15 minutes actually came from this virtual training program. So it's called Inside the Chinese Mind. So if people are interested, just go online. My website is clca.com.au. All the information is there. Okay, so my time's up. Thank you, Linda. I hand the mic back to you.
Thank you, Jing. That was excellent presentation. I have to tell you, I kept thinking of my teenage son when you were talking about small attention span, small grabs of content, visual, not words. Gee whiz, I told you we were going to learn some transferable skills today, and looks like you've just helped me with my teenage son. Thank you very much. Thank you for your lovely presentation, Jing. That was excellent. I now have the pleasure of passing over the baton to Claire Sims. Claire is the Senior Manager Global Markets for South Australian Tourism Commission, and Claire will be sharing with us today some great examples on how virtual can help with tourism. And she will also be talking about some of SATC's tools that you have available to you. So I'll now pass you over to Claire. Thanks, Claire.
Hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. Linda, just very quickly, I seem to have an issue with regards to
That's because I was talking at the same time and not actually passing the baton over to you, so my apologies. Technology will get me every time.
I still can't move the slides over though.
Let's have a look.
Sorry.
That's totally fine. You should be able to click on the screen now and it should have access. Good. Yeah, not me controlling it, sorry. Okay. Anyway, let's see how we go. Look, hello everyone, and thank you very much. Look, very quickly, just from a tourism viewpoint, I think wine and tourism has been, I suppose, fairly linked at the hip. And so I suppose particularly I was asked to join today just to really take you through some of the
assets in terms of marketing that we have available for yourselves to use, especially in South Australia, obviously. And I suppose just to make your virtual presentations more exciting. So I thought what I'd do is just take you through what, and I can't move to the next screen. Sorry, Linda.
That's all right. Give it to me, I'll do it.
Thank you. Okay, so very quickly, sadly, we actually reached our 2020 target in December of last year before bushfires, and then, of course, the situation that we have currently going as well. It was nice to be able to reach it as a South Australian tourism industry to reach those numbers, but the reality is that it's a bit of a restart. So we've really thought about that and how do we actually continue to work with our partners as well. And so I thought I'd just give you a bit of an understanding in terms of what we've made available to our industry and what is actually available to you as well. So if we could go to the next screen. And I think this is really key that we actually show that these resources are available, because for South Australian Tourism Commission, we actually have these marketing assets that are available to anyone who wants to positively promote South Australia. And of course, that includes our wine industry. So what I want to specifically look at on the next screen is, I suppose, our trade website. So number one, obviously a lot of you are doing Zoom meetings. So look, I just wanted to let you know about trade.southaustralia.com. There is a little section called support that you can just see here. If you click on that, you'll be able to find Zoom backgrounds. And if I go to the next screen, here are some that I've just pulled off, and you can see that these are just a few examples, and I think to Nathan's point about being exciting, don't be boring, have a look at what else is out there and what you can actually use. So you can see I've obviously used some wine imagery that we do have, and of course a little bit of bar scene, just again to make it a little bit more lively. The other reality is that you can also go to our website, and if I can just go to the next screen, is our media gallery. Now, this is media.southaustralia.com. To register, all you have to do is enter your details. It is automated, so usually you'll have access into our gallery within 10 minutes. Within the gallery, there is significant amount of imagery and video. Because in Zoom worlds, and I noticed that somebody did ask about Zoom, your background or your virtual backgrounds, you can actually choose whether you want to have a static image or whether you want to have moving footage as well. So do have a look, and if I go to the next screen, I thought I'd just give you a bit of an understanding. So I just did a general search within our media gallery of the term vine. Now I got 631 results of imagery that's associated with just vines, and in fact the next one, when I did the next search, and we'll go on to the next page. Thank you. So I just did a winery search and I got 1,684. Now, you can see down on the left-hand side that you can see you can search by different regions. Now, our tourism regions are different to wine regions. So often a wine region will fall within one of our tourism regions. We have 12 in South Australia. But I thought it was really key because, again, it's making sure that when you're actually doing virtual tastings or presentations, that you have this ability to kind of connect and actually show people where you're actually from. And I think that's a key thing. To Jing's point, talking about premium, especially in the China market, to them premium is blue skies, and we have a lot of blue skies, and you know, the wonderful vineyards that you all operate and work in. These are clean environments, and I think I suppose when we're talking to these people, we need to actually show them what we mean by premium. You know, the proof points are the fact that, you know, we have these amazing environments that we actually grow our produce in. And so it's really key to be able to show that. So again, please register, use this resource. There's also video. So as I mentioned, with Zoom backgrounds, you can actually have video behind it. And so it's a key thing to keep people interested. And I think it's important that, you know, trying to have that dialogue, you know, as most people have, you have to change how you do keep your relationships going. And so everything from quizzes, we do a pub quiz, would you believe, in the UK market with our retailers out in the UK. And we constantly get them to showcase different shots of South Australia as part of that quiz, so that we get people actually engaging, and it just has a little bit more fun and an interaction as well. If I could just move to the next slide as well. With regards to this particular crisis, and we had to respond to the bushfire crisis as well, and then this one came up pretty quickly. We actually moved very quickly to write a global trade engagement strategy, and if I can move to the next slide. The key thing here was, we, like the wine industry, we are very much about relationships orientation. And what you can see in front of you is what's called the Australian Tourism Exchange. This was held in Adelaide back in 2018. Interestingly, there are 1,000 appointments done on a business-to-business basis over a 4-day period. So each business has up to 100 face-to-face meetings. And this is the biggest trade show for tourism in Australia. And I believe it's actually one of the largest trade shows in the Southern Hemisphere as well. The reality is that it was meant to happen 3 weeks ago. This year it was meant to be in Melbourne. Clearly it couldn't happen. So I suppose what we had to do is, how do we take that relationship building activity that we had very much on these very personal business-to-business meetings, talking about our distribution offshore. Tourism is very similar to wine in terms of distribution. However, we don't get locked into one distributor. And so I suppose that's, how do we keep that conversation alive for when the market does come back? Obviously, we have also issues around international borders. But if I could move to the next screen, what we did in South Australia, and so sorry, this is the Adelaide Convention Centre, and this is what actually ATE looks like. So the red area is South Australia, and each state and territory is actually present here. So it took over the whole convention centre, just to give you an understanding in terms of scale. And it was really important because it does give people, I suppose, an understanding of how much product there is available. So Tourism Australia, I suppose, wasn't able to jump into this area and organise it. So for us at South Australia Tourism Commission, we decided that we wanted to take on an ability, and how do we change that face-to-face meeting, and how do we go into the virtual world? So we actually looked at various online platforms in terms of how could we make our international distributors meet with our local product in this new virtual world. And what you can see on the screen is a product called Remo, where people are actually sitting at tables and they are literally meeting with their distributors, so they can have those private conversations that they need to have. And for our product, they could actually update their distributors on what was actually happening in terms of product enhancements and so forth. Now, this is actually just a snapshot of the UK. And we rolled this out in all of our global markets. So that's currently 14 markets that the South Australian Tourism Commission markets to. And what we found was, it was just really amazing that not only did our industry find this really interesting and important, our distributors actually found this was really key for them as well, because of course they are looking at recovery and how they can actually recover here too. Now, I know on the other side you can see a Scapegoat Adventures and A Taste of South Australia, who I believe might also be in this call today. Both presented here as well. So it was really important for them to be able to tell what was going on and to participate. So it is really important that we look at how does face-to-face change, and how do we engage in that virtual world, and how do we keep making it relevant. On the next screen, I just wanted to highlight one particular, how do we engage with the retailers? And so we obviously work with the travel trade, and this is a publication in the UK called Travel Trade Gazette, and this was interesting because they actually hosted about 20 different destinations on this particular webinar. We were very, very fortunate that we worked with a gentleman who's based on Kangaroo Island. You can see him just in the bottom of the screen. His name is Craig Wickham. In the top right is actually Dan, who's our executive for the South Australian Tourism Commission based in London. And obviously this was really key to engage because there were 20 other destinations on the same call, and how was South Australia going to actually jump out and be different? Well, we brought our industry along with us. And Craig, the background, and look, I'll leave this for you to have a look at a little bit later, but when you actually watch this presentation, his back screen in Zoom is actually a shot that is a camera, and it's actually linked. So you can see the koala in the background, but the great thing is the koala starts to move. And it was quite interesting just on this, because this was a Facebook Live, was that the amount of engagement and people who started getting really excited by the fact that there was this movement happening in the screen was really important. Look, I know that this presentation will be shared with you after this as well. So this particular, when you get to this screen, you can click on it and it will actually take you through to this Facebook Live. So you can just see different ways that I suppose tourism operators are really engaging with our retail distributors offshore, and how they're trying to take their product to life, even though tourism experiences are actually based here. How do we take that and how do we continue to promote even with international borders shut? That was it for me. I just really wanted to say, please use our resources at the Tourism Commission. They are there for you, and it's really easy for you to be able to access those as well. I'd like to now hand back to Linda, and thank you all for your time. Linda, you're on mute.
Sorry. Told you the technology will get me every time. Thank you for that presentation. I've got 101 questions about Remo, but I'll wait till later to ask you. That looks very exciting. What I'd love to do right now is actually pass you over to Ellie Lockwood. Ellie is the Manager of Stakeholder Engagement in Wine Australia, and is also on the board of Wine Communicators of Australia. So we have a lot to do with each other, Ellie and I. And Ellie also is going to go through some of the tools that you can grab from Wine Australia and a number of other things. So I'll pass you over to Ellie. Thanks, Ellie.
Thanks, Linda. And thank you, Wine Communicators, and also Department of Trade and Investment for hosting this webinar. Linda, I might need you to flick through my slides as well. So today, similarly to Claire from South Australian Tourism Commission, I'm going to take you through a few tools that Wine Australia have that will help you with your online tastings and help to promote your wines internationally. And I'm going to take you through and have a quick look at what people are doing in regions and brands, because it's just fascinating to see the level of innovation and trial that's happening in our sector at the moment. So next slide, please. Thank you, Linda. So before I launch into the tools, firstly, I wanted to touch on the Made Our Way brand. This brand was launched by Wine Australia to represent the Australian wine sector internationally. And it really encapsulates the winemaking community and spirit of the Australian wine sector. So the brand really communicates imagery and stories of our winemakers. You can see obviously there's Corinna Wright of Oliver's Taranga Vineyard, our growers, our landscape, our climate, and it really underpins pretty much everything that we do internationally, whether that's consumer tastings, advertising, trade shows, masterclasses, and much, much more. But the reason why I'm telling you about this is because this is a brand that you can use as well in your online tastings and your interactions with your distributors internationally and your consumers. It's for the wine sector, and I'll go into that in a minute. But what sits under this brand, thank you, Linda, next slide, is Australian Wine Discovered educational program. And this is really what I want to focus on. And if there's one thing I want you to leave this short presentation with is to really understand what an amazing tool this is. And it really is there for the Australian wine sector to tap into and utilise. So Australian Wine Discovered is a free online Australian wine education resource for you to use. It's been downloaded over 23,000 times since it was launched last year. It's accessed by a wide range of people, from global wine educators, wineries, retailers, distributors, importers, marketers, students, you name it, consumers, wine enthusiasts. It really has a very broad reach and is accessible to all. So why do we do this when there's other education programs out there? we found that a lot of the education programs that do exist are traditional wine education, and it tends to be something you need to sign up for. You need to subscribe. Sometimes you need to pay, and it has a sense of exclusivity about it. And it's quite a limited audience, but what we wanted to do with this was really open up Australian wine education to everybody, whether you're a consumer in South Korea or a winery doing an online wine tasting. It's free, accessible wine education on Australian wine, open and available to everybody globally. So it's an incredible resource. It's current, relevant, it's pretty much at your fingertips. Thank you, Linda. Next slide. It's free open access. It's available at the click of a button, and you don't need to sign up for it. You don't need to join. You don't need to be an accredited educator to tap into this platform, and it's easy to utilise. You just search through the filters under australianwinediscovered.com to find what you're after. You can download things too. It's got global reach. We've got several modules that have been translated into simplified Chinese, and parts that have been translated into Japanese and also into Korean. What I think is one of the greatest assets is it's completely downloadable and editable. So each topic has a PowerPoint presentation which you can download onto your computer. You can then edit it. You can drop in your own logo, your bottle images, pictures of yourselves, your winemakers, your families. You can chop and change slides. You can mix slides from one presentation into another. So it's incredibly versatile and editable, which is absolutely fantastic. What we also do with a number of the topics and the modules, we recommend associated imagery, videos, and we also provide, probably not supposed to say this, but I call them a cheat sheet with more detail for presenters. It gives you a lot more depth of information for each module. Next slide, thank you, Linda. So it's really world-leading content. It's very visual. We've used a lot of illustrations and videos and imagery to break the complex information into something people can understand quickly and easily. So it's not typical wine education material. And look, right up until the first week of March, when lockdown started to kick in, our teams were travelling around Australia, still photographing regions. They're in Riverland, interviewing people, taking video footage and imagery as well too. So it's very relevant, it's very current as well too, and it's on our site ready to use straight away. Sitting behind these, as I mentioned, there's really detailed facilitator guides to give you additional knowledge and information as well too. Next slide, thanks Linda. Really world-leading content. It was a very rigorous process to get to that point as well. So each program, and there's 25 programs in total, is between 5,000 and 14,000 words. And we've had more than 10 industry experts assess and go through every single program. That includes writers and sub-editors, masters of wine, wine educators and all sorts. So it's a really rigorous editorial process and approval process. So it's really made sure that the information is up to date and accurate and is a great read. And we work directly with the regional bodies and the producers that were involved as well too. Next slide, thank you. So as I mentioned, we ended up with 25 comprehensive programs covering Australian wine varieties, Australian regions, and then topics of interest as well too. We simply didn't have the scope to cover and the budget to cover all regions, but what we have done is included a number of the other regions into many of the topics, such as the Foundations of Australian Wine topic. Next slide, thank you. So there's more than 200 editable materials and resources which you can download directly from Australian Wine Discovered. I've mentioned some of them already, detailed guides, editable PowerPoints, videos and imagery. But there's also some really interesting tools and resources which you can provide to your contacts internationally, your importers, distributors, retailers. So tasting mats, certificates of attendance, and again, these are available bilingual. You can edit these as well too. So you can include your stockist details, you can include local RRPs, etc. So there's no restrictions upon all of these materials. They're downloadable and editable, and most importantly, they're free for the Australian wine sector. No accreditations required, no requirement to sit a test, or no hoops to jump through. It's available to everyone, everywhere. And the next slide has the link to the, yes, so AustralianWineDiscovered.com. So really recommend that you all jump on board and have a look at that. Next slide, thank you. So linked to this is our image gallery. So like I said, at SATC, we've got a number of images and videos which all live on our image gallery. That is the web link there. You can also access that through the bottom of our homepage at www.wineaustralia.com. You will need to log on or log in to this area and request imagery, but it's a very quick turnaround time. So I'd encourage you to have a look at that. Next slide, thank you. We've also got a Made Our Way toolkit. So I touched on this at the beginning of the presentation. So this covers point of sale, branding templates, logos, and it's material for you to utilise in your online tasting. And it can be co-branded as well too. I'll also just quickly mention AustralianWine.com, which is a consumer website. And this includes some fantastic stories about Australian winemakers and regions. And I had a quick look this morning. Dr. Kath Kidman, who's just amazing. Jan and Coonawarra, she's featured there. Joel Pizzini, Tasmania, Beechworth, all sorts. So well worth having a look at that as well. Next slide, thank you. We've, since COVID, we've been releasing a number of webinars for the wine sector, and they are all available through the link there. I won't go into all of them, but there's a couple there that I think are relevant for you. I wanted to draw your attention to them. One of them, which you'll find through that link, is Marketing Through a Crisis, which is delivered by Trish Barry from Mastermind Consulting. And she talks about how to market wine digitally and social media. The second one was delivered by Linda, Wine Communicators, and it was research funded by Wine Australia and conducted by Dr. Roberta Crouch. And this webinar talks about research on virtual tastings and virtual cellar doors, and the links there as well to the Wine Communicators YouTube. So both are worth having a look at another time. Thank you, Linda. Market insights. Look, I'm not going to, there's too much information in here. You can have a look at this later, but it is worth putting up here. We've got an incredible amount of information and data and analysis on our vintage, supply, our markets, consumer demand, and on global trends. So why is this important? Well, it allows you to really speak with authority when you're doing international tastings and events. On a myriad of different areas. An example might be a growth of imported wine in a specific market, or to talk about the growth or decline of specific varieties, price points, and wine styles. So all the information's there, and our team are really happy to answer any specific questions you've got, or direct you if you can't find what you're looking for, and the contact details are included there. Next slide, thank you. What's Wine Australia doing? Well, we are moving to the virtual world, and we've already started delivering Australian Wine Discovered educational tastings internationally in Hong Kong, and soon into Korea, Japan, Singapore, and other markets. I've put a link up there. There's no time to have a look at this now, but it's a video of Mark Davidson, who is our Global Education Manager for North America, and Mac Forbes, doing a presentation and utilising Australian Wine Discovered education platform for the Guild Song. So if you want to see it in use and practically how it works, that's a really good resource. Next slide. What are regions doing? Look, a lot is happening. Yarra Valley launched a virtual cellar door at the end of March, and they've live streamed 7 wine down chats each Thursday since then, and they're selling the packs of the wines that they feature. So I've just got a quick video. Linda, if you can press play.
Hi, it's Han and Sam here from Greensdale Vineyard.
Hi, I'm Steve Webber.
And I'm Kate Webber, and we're from the Borderley Wine.
Hi, it's Jaden from Jaden on Wines.
G'day, it's Peter Dillon from Handpick Wine.
Hi, Willie Lund from Yering Station.
Hi guys, Simon Steele from Medhurst Wines.
While things are all a bit weird and strange, we're bringing the Yarra Valley to you guys.
The 2020 vintage is now safely in barrel.
Yeah, the wines are still amazing.
So, make time for a wind down.
Always time for a wind down.
Order the Yarra Valley virtual tasting pack
From wineyarravalley.com.au.
Please join us for a tour and a taste and a chat.
Every Thursday at 5 p.m.
On Instagram.
Instagram.
Wine Yarra Valley on Instagram every Thursday at 5 p.m.
With some of the Yarra Valley's finest.
Love the finger action. Look, they're doing really well with this campaign, and we're seeing other regions. We're seeing Barossa doing their Facebook Live Happy Hour, Macquarie Vale, Margaret River, and other regions are doing buy local campaigns. So everybody's really harnessing the opportunity to operate digitally. What are wineries doing? You can just scroll through the next one, Linda. Wineries are doing a lot of really interesting things as well too. So Treasury have a number of virtual chats with producers. In this instance, it's with some footballers, which is an interesting approach. And they've also, with their producers, with their winemakers as well. And next slide. And Unico Zello, many of you would be aware, they're running this picture of Brenton Carter and Michael Downer from Murdoch Hill Wines. They're doing live wine chats at 5 o'clock every night with a special guest and blind tastings. So people are really pushing the boundaries digitally. You can see there's a lot happening in the virtual world as we move towards an online instantaneous audience. So I hope this has been useful for you. I'd really encourage you to tap into some of these tools and certainly contact Wine Australia if you have any questions. Thank you for having us. Linda.
Thank you, Ellie. That was amazing, and great video that was. It was disconcerting how their mouths were still moving, but I couldn't hear them. But it was really, really interesting. Thanks so much. I wanted to share with everybody before we go to questions, so please type in your questions now. At the beginning of this year, believe it or not, before all the planes were grounded, I was in the US and I was presenting at a wine marketing conference then. And I was part of my presentation was some of the tools that Wine Australia provide, and the American audience was absolutely blown away with what tools Australians have at their fingertips, really. So I think we're very, very fortunate to have all these wonderful tools. Let's have a look at the questions. So some of you panel members may have seen these questions before I've had a chance to. So I'm going to start with the first one, which says, what programs are you using to make your thumbnails? That was for Nathan.
I'm lucky enough to have a graphic artist who works for us, and she uses Photoshop. I know there are programs out there similar to Canva that you can use, and there's even some cheap online thumbnail templates that you can buy. Just a quick word of warning that thumbnails need to be different for each platform. So they're different sizes, and also you've got to be wary of what platform likes what in a thumbnail. So yeah, we're lucky enough to have a graphic artist who does it all in Photoshop.
Great, thank you, Nathan. There's a question here around Ring Central. I just wanted to let you know that Ring Central kindly are powering this event for us today, and they've kindly donated their time and a resource to us. So that is why they were featured on here. Jing, here's a question for you. Which is the best platform to use for us to transmit virtual tastings to buyers, distributors in China? I'll let you answer that one.
Okay, that's a pretty tough one to answer because I don't think there's a straight up answer to that. But there are a few points I wanted to make. Actually, there are 3 points I'd like to make. First thing is that there are lots and lots of platforms in China that you can tap into, but most of them are not really familiar to a lot of Aussies. So the first thing I want to say is, rather than trying to come up with a conclusion yourself, have a conversation with your distributor and ask them what sort of platform have they been using. And quite often they will say to you, well, we can use Zoom. And that has been the case for a lot of my Zoom meetings with a lot of my associates in China. Like, for example, last Saturday, I did a session with over 100 Chinese clients over in China, and they are happy to use Zoom. as the medium. So have a conversation with your distributor first and find out what they're comfortable using. If it's Zoom, then that's a sweet spot because I think most people are using Zoom already. But there are, from time to time, some of the apps that they've been using, for example, Douyu or Ding Talk, which probably have never been heard of amongst Aussies. So have a chat with them. That's the first thing. The second thing I would like to say is that whichever platform you're going to use, this is not a one person's job, okay? You always want to have a technical person with you to do a tasting session so that you're not trying to do everything yourself, because that can be very distracting and not really making you look professional in front of a camera. And the third thing I want to say is that nothing really works perfectly well in this world. I think I think whether you're Chinese or Australian, I think we all kind of expect something might go wrong at some point when using technology. So don't try to think that this has to be a perfect delivery, because nothing is ever going to be perfect if we rely on technology. There are always going to be glitches. As long as you address those things, acknowledge that we're doing our best, people will understand. But certainly, I think the most important thing is to have a chat with your Chinese distributor and find out whether there's something that you both can use quite comfortably.
Jing, what about, it's mentioned in this question about, is it UQ and
Yes.
also WeChat as different options? You still think Zoom?
I would say Zoom, simply because Aussies are used to using Zoom. One of the things with using technology that are coming from China is that a lot of these service providers in China, they try to create their own ecosystem. So quite often their services, their apps are not compatible with other apps. So they're really trying to fight amongst themselves. So it's hard to come up with a single answer on which platform should you use. For example, some people will say Douyu, which is probably the #1 live streaming platform in China. But if you use Douyu, then that's the only platform they will allow you to use, because you can't really switch between one platform to another. So they're all sort of in their own way doing things. So I would probably say, just for the sake of convenience, convince your Chinese partner to switch to Zoom if they can.
Okay, great, thank you. Claire, there's a question about the platform that you use, the face-to-face meetings with Remo.
Correct.
So we know that that's what it's called. My question to you...
it's remo.com. It's a UK software system as well. Just so if you go in and have a look, .co, so C-O. Great,
thank you. Now, I have a question to you on that one, and that is, from the technology point of view, did you have to have like a team of people in the background putting people into meeting rooms, or is it all automated?
So we're used to pre-scheduled appointments, and so we did actually do pre-scheduled, and each appointment was 10 minutes long. Unfortunately, there wasn't a push along as such, so we did actually have resources behind there as well.
Great, thank you. Sounds very interesting, that one. I'll have to look that one up. I'm just looking now. We don't actually have any questions, and it's perfect timing. Any more questions, I beg your pardon. It's perfect timing because we are dead on our time limit. So I'd like to say thank you very much to our panel members today. It's been very insightful and really, really interesting and engaging information. Thank you so much. I'd also like to thank particularly Department for Trade and Investment. Without your support, we would not be able to have this webinar series presented at all. So thank you very much. And also thank you for everybody who has attended today. We appreciate you being here and staying for the whole time. There is one more session to go, session 3, which we'll be hearing from a panel of wine industry people who have been doing virtual tasting. So you'll learn from your peers, and they're an interesting bunch of people. So please join us this time on Friday. It's not too late to register. Jump online and you can register. Please also remember, or please know, that Department for Trade and Investment have also opened up a private group, LinkedIn group. The group is called Department for Trade and Investment Wine Industry Group. Please look it up and join it. We encourage you all to post your virtual tastings on there and engage everybody on there, but also to get feedback from our panel and also from people who are on there. I know some of our panel are already joined. So thank you again. Thank you to our panel members again, and we will see you all on Friday.